Welcome back. Last time we talked about the operational nightmare that forced our founders to build an automated back office employee. Today, we're picking up right where we left off. They had the perfect technology, but finding the right name was an absolute nightmare.
Yeah, it's actually a fascinating paradox, really, when you sort of pull back and look at the broader context of what they were trying to achieve.
Right.
I mean, the entire point of the software they built was to give solopreneurs ultimate freedom,
Yeah.
to rescue them from that administrative quicksand.
Mm-hmm.
But their initial attempts to actually name this incredibly freeing tool, they almost doomed the entire project. The names they were brainstorming communicated the exact opposite of freedom.
And the mission of this deep dive is to unpack the agonizing, surprisingly human, and honestly highly relatable process of finding a brand name. Because, people tend to assume that successful tech companies just have these magical, aha moments in the shower.
Right, or they hire some ridiculously expensive naming guru.
Exactly, some guy who meditates on a mountaintop and comes down with the perfect brand identity.
Yeah, well, the reality hidden in these design notes is much messier than that.
Way messier.
These creators, they were not naming gurus. They were a deeply frustrated team,
Yeah.
just navigating this labyrinth of objectively terrible ideas to finally land on a practical solution.
Yeah.
And to understand the friction they hit, we really have to start at the whiteboard stage.
Okay, take us there.
So they had this incredible piece of automated technology, right? Designed to basically absorb all the manual labor of a modern back office.
Right.
But they needed a placeholder, a working title so they could refer to it in meetings.
Sure, just something to put on the whiteboard.
Exactly. And so they decided to call it Project UBE, which stood for Unified Business Ecosystem.
Wait, I actually kind of want to challenge the premise that this was a terrible idea.
Really?
Yeah, because from a strictly analytical engineering standpoint, isn't absolute clarity the holy grail of branding? Like, if I'm an engineer building a complex tool, unified business ecosystem tells me, objectively, exactly what I'm looking at.
Well, technically, sure.
Right. The software was unified, it was for business, and it was an ecosystem. Why is that an emotional disaster?
Because, well, it fails entirely because branding isn't about engineering accuracy, it's about human psychology.
Okay, fair.
When a user hears a phrase like unified business ecosystem, they do not feel empowered. They feel alienated before they even create an account.
Right, it's just so dry.
It has absolutely no heart. I mean, it sounds like a soul-crushing corporate IT chore. It brings to mind that heavy, incredibly expensive legacy software that a massive faceless corporation just forces its thousands of employees to use.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
The wording inherently implies a lack of autonomy, which is toxic for a product that's supposed to deliver freedom.
I have to say, looking at the words Project UBE, it sounds like the kind of software where you have to take a mandatory 3-day corporate seminar just to learn how to log in.
Yes, exactly.
You can almost smell the bad conference room coffee and feel the, fluorescent lights buzzing over your cubicle.
Right, and that visceral reaction is exactly the problem.
Yeah.
The name implies a steep learning curve. It implies dense instruction manuals, endless IT support tickets.
Endless tickets. And just the feeling of being a very small, insignificant cog in a giant machine.
Which is the opposite of a solopreneur.
Exactly. Think about who this tool was built for. The independent founder. The person who intentionally left the corporate world specifically to escape mandatory 3-day seminars and rigid ecosystems.
So by leaning into clinical accuracy, they were accidentally threatening their own target audience.
Right. Threatening them with the exact corporate trauma they were trying to run away from. It's like inventing a jetpack and calling it a pedestrian commuter harness.
That is a perfect way to put it.
It might be technically accurate, but it just completely kills the vibe immediately.
Totally.
Yeah.
It completely contradicted the freeing, automated nature of the tool they had just built.
So the team realizes Project UBE is way too cold and depressing. They hit a wall.
Yeah, big one.
And they did what a lot of founders do when the clinical approach fails. They pivoted completely to the opposite extreme. We can call this the parent trap.
The parent trap, yeah. Which is a very common psychological retreat. When a new direction feels intimidating or just falls flat, you instinctively retreat to what you know.
Right, safety.
Exactly. You try to honor your roots. And in this case, their roots were in their parent incubator company.
Which was called Millionese. Now, just for some context for you listening, Millionese was the small agency where this whole automated software idea was born out of sheer necessity.
Right.
And the notes show the team sitting down and attempting to mash up the name Millionese with, like, every tech buzzword they could possibly think of.
Oh, it's brutal.
The brainstorm lists are incredible. We have Milli Echo, we have Milla Vista,
Yeah.
there's Millicore, My Orbit, and My Apex.
The irony buried in those brainstorm lists is just profound. I
Yeah.
mean, you have to remember the physical reality of who they were at that moment.
Right.
Millionese was a small, passionate, boutique digital agency.
Just a few people.
Yeah, a lean team of dedicated people trying to build a lifeboat for other lean teams. But these mashed up names, Milla Vista, Millicore, they accidentally sounded like a generic, massive tech giant from 2005.
Oh, 100%.
They completely lost the plot of their own identity.
I feel like if I bought a bulky desktop computer in 2005, it would have come pre-installed with Milla Vista antivirus.
Oh, absolutely.
And I would spend the next 5 years of my life trying to figure out how to uninstall it from my hard drive.
Right, with all the pop-ups.
Exactly. So how did a small boutique agency end up sounding like a bloated multinational conglomerate?
By making the classic engineer's mistake, honestly. They were still fundamentally trying to name the technology.
Oh.
They were staring at whiteboard diagrams of their cloud databases, their synchronization protocols, their integration algorithms.
Getting lost in the weeds?
Exactly. They were entirely focused on the mechanics of what the software physically did in the background. They thought the value of their product was the code itself.
So they were basically trying to name the engine of the car instead of the thrill of the road trip.
That analogy hits the nail on the head. I mean, if you are selling a sports car, you don't name the car after the fuel injection system or the catalytic converter. You name it after the feeling of speed or freedom or power.
Because that's what the buyer actually wants.
Right. The end user of this software doesn't care about cloud databases or API bridges. They care about running their own business.
They care about their own journey.
Exactly. So as long as the team kept trying to name the software based on its technical specifications or its corporate parentage, they were going to remain trapped.
Trapped in the cycle of generating sterile, outdated-sounding tech monoliths.
Yeah, exactly.
So how do you actually execute that pivot? I imagine it is incredibly difficult to just tear your eyes away from the physical thing you just spent thousands of hours coding.
It's very hard.
Project UBE is too corporate. Milla Vista belongs on a CD-ROM. So to break out of this parent trap, they had to fundamentally shift their perspective.
Right.
They had to physically stop looking at the software on their screens and start looking at the human being sitting on the other side of the keyboard who was actually going to sign up for it.
Yeah, and that shift required a massive dose of empathy. They realized they had to stop naming the tool and start naming the founder's journey.
Right.
So they asked themselves a deceptively simple question. When someone comes to our platform, what are they actually doing in their life at that exact specific moment?
Well, I would assume the answer to that is entirely emotional. I mean, it's not about their business plan or their tax structure yet.
Not at all. The team zeroed in on the raw emotion, the intense fear a founder feels on day zero.
Oh, day zero. Let's really paint a picture of day zero for you, the listener.
Yeah, it's so important.
Think about your own day zero feeling. Try to remember that specific moment in time.
At the very beginning.
Exactly. You are staring at a blank slate. You have this dream, this idea you've been talking about with your friends for months, maybe years.
Probably annoying them with it, yeah.
Right. And today is the day you are actually going to legitimize it. You are taking that brave first step.
Planting your flag.
Planting your flag.
Yeah.
It is totally overwhelming. You have no safety net. You are absolutely terrified, but you are ready to build.
That inception point. That is the emotional frequency they needed to tap into. It's the absolute genesis of the journey. And when they forced themselves to focus purely on that concept, the starting line where a founder takes a deep breath and steps into the unknown, it led the team directly to their first core word, initial.
Initial. I like that. It's incredibly clean. It has momentum.
It really does.
But I want to play devil's advocate here for a second.
Okay, go for it.
Why focus on the beginning? Why not focus on the destination? I mean, a lot of brands promise wealth or success or ultimate mastery.
Right, yeah.
Why not name it after the feeling of crossing the finish line rather than standing at the starting line?
Because promising the finish line often feels hollow.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, especially to someone who is currently terrified of just taking the first step.
That makes a lot of sense.
Right. Initial resonated perfectly with the team because it fundamentally acknowledged the user's courage in the present moment.
It's validating.
Exactly. It validated the starting point without making grandiose fake promises.
Mm.
However, they quickly realized it was only half the equation.
Right, because the start isn't everything.
Exactly. Initial beautifully captured the bravery of the starting line. But what is the immediate reality right after the starting gun goes off?
Oh, total unmitigated chaos.
Yes.
You take that leap, you plant your flag, and immediately you are drowning in administrative details.
Precisely. Once a founder actually starts, the emotional high of day zero just vanishes,
Replaced by panic.
replaced by a very painful operational problem.
Ugh.
They are suddenly forced to switch between a fragmented mess of disconnected browser tabs just to manage a single client or complete a basic task.
Oh, it's the worst.
You have your email open in one tab, your billing software in another, a CRM over here, a document signer over there.
It is a disjointed nightmare.
It really is. And what founders absolutely hate more than anything else is that constant frantic switching. They lose context, they lose time, and ultimately, they lose their focus.
It's an exhausting way to work. You end up spending more time managing the tools than you do actually running the business you just started.
Right.
What they really need is a centralized control panel to orchestrate all of that madness from one single spot.
Uh-huh.
Exactly. Because, and this is the absolute core of the issue, a DJ doesn't run across the room to change a track. Everything is right in front of them on a deck.
Wow. Yeah, that DJ visual perfectly isolates the solution they were building.
Right.
A founder needs that exact same single pane of glass to operate efficiently.
Mm-hmm.
So if the word initial represents the brave first step, the chaotic reality of taking that step requires a place of control.
Yeah.
Think about your DJ analogy, or consider a captain steering a massive ship through a storm,
Mm-hmm.
or even a founder standing up to pitch a cohesive vision to a room full of people.
Where does that happen?
Right, where does that centralized authority happen? It happens on a deck.
Ah.
That realization, born directly out of the user's operational pain, gave the team their second core word.
Deck.
Deck.
So now, looking at the whiteboard, the puzzle pieces are finally on the table. You have the two halves of the equation.
Yep.
On one side, you have the emotional starting line, capturing the bravery of the founder, initial. And on the other side, you have the highly practical, centralized control center that saves them from the administrative chaos, deck.
And bringing those two concepts together provided the final resolution. Smashing the words together created the name IniDeck.
IniDeck.
Yeah.
It's just fascinating how, after all the corporate jargon of unified ecosystems and the 2005 tech buzzwords of Mila Vista, the entire process just comes down to a simple combination of two very grounded human-centric ideas.
It really does. And it's stuck because it works on multiple functional levels too.
How so?
Well, from a purely practical standpoint, IniDeck is highly utilitarian.
Right.
It's easy to read, it is easy to spell, and it is easily pronounceable by a global audience. There's no phonetic confusion to trip over.
And according to the postmortem articles, it also solved a massive digital real estate issue they had been worrying about.
Oh, it did, yeah, because IniDeck was a completely blank slate, made-up word. They didn't have to fight an uphill battle on the internet.
Right, because it's unique.
Exactly. They automatically owned the front page of Google right out of the gate, without having to compete against generic search terms or massive existing corporations.
Which is huge.
That clean operational runway was just a massive relief for a small team.
When they finally landed on IniDeck, they did not view it as some magical, universally perfect god name that was handed down from the heavens.
No, not at all. The prevailing emotion was just relief.
Relief.
Yeah, it was a deeply pragmatic victory.
It is simply a humble, highly practical solution that finally checked all their boxes. After weeks of agonizing over names that sounded like heavy corporate burdens or, outdated antivirus software.
Right, the Mila Vista era.
Yeah, they found something that just worked. IniDeck doesn't sound like a fragmented, messy software subscription.
Yeah.
It sounds like a solid, sturdy foundation for a founder to build their dream upon. It does exactly what it says on the tin.
Which is the ultimate goal of good functional design, honestly.
Yeah.
The name IniDeck is entirely unpretentious. It serves the user, it acknowledges their starting point, the initial step, and it gives them the tool they need to survive the journey, the deck.
I love that.
It shifts the entire narrative away from the technology itself and places the spotlight firmly where it belongs,
Mm.
on the business owner and their daily operational reality.
It's a name that respects the user's time and their ambition. It silently says, we know starting is terrifying, and we know running the back office is a fragmented nightmare. Here is a sturdy place to stand while you figure it out.
Yeah.
It's just incredible how much psychological heavy lifting a simple made-up word has to do.
A lot of weight.
We went from the soul-crushing vibe of a unified business ecosystem, navigated through the trap of trying to sound like a tech giant, and finally arrived at the empowering simplicity of a starting deck.
And it serves as a permanent reminder for anyone building something, whether it's a product, a service, or a brand.
What's the reminder?
You have to step out of your own perspective.
Right.
The engineers had to physically stop naming their code. The founders had to stop naming their legacy. They had to look at the terrified, excited person on day zero and ask, what do you need?
They needed a place to stand, a place to work that didn't feel like an endless administrative chore. And that brings us to the end of this particular deep dive. We've unpacked the nightmare of the whiteboard, the trap of corporate jargon, and the eventual realization that simplicity and empathy win the day.
They usually do.
But we want to leave you with something to really mull over, because this isn't just about how one company found its name in a stack of old design notes. This is about how you operate in your own world, right now, today. Think about your own business right now. Are you still running down the hall to manage 50 different browser tabs, or are you ready to command your empire from a single deck?